How do you win at fantasy football? Well, the first tenet of how you win in fantasy football is not wasting early round draft capital on quarterbacks. With the exception of maybe if you're in a 2-quarterback league, maybe if it's a standard format with 6-point passing touchdowns, you can draft them a little earlier. But I'm telling you, people, for general purposes, you should not be pulling an early round draft pick on a quarterback in fantasy. It's going to hurt your chances. Playing with running backs and receivers, you can pick up those spots. You can pick up a Gronk, someone that's going to give your team an edge. Don't pick the quarterback in like the first or second or third round. That's just stupid. Don't do it. All right? Now that we got that out of the way, that kind of leads into why I'm doing this video partially. But, it's late July now. It's time for another fantasy football advice video from Justin on LitTube. And that's what I'm going to give you right now. I'm going to give you my top 5 deep value and sleeper quarterbacks for this upcoming season of 2018 to 2019. It's going to be a hell of a fantasy football season. And I'm telling you right now, there is an abundance of late round value to be had at quarterback. I'm going to give you my top 5 selections right in this video. And our first late round quarterback sleeper of 2018, he's coming in at an average draft position according to fantasyfootballcalculator.com of 10th round, 5th pick. It is Patrick Mahomes! Now, you all might be wondering why I would choose Patrick Mahomes, a quarterback that frankly hasn't even started more than like one game in his NFL career, to be a potential sleeper this season. Well, my reasoning behind this is very simple. First, you look at Patrick Mahomes, the college quarterback prospect. He came out of college with an early breakout age. I mean, he was already making tons of plays in college at age 19 as a starter. And he put up good stats. He's got a hell of an arm. He's got a 97th percentile throw velocity. I mean, this guy, he's kind of like a more mobile Brett Favre, if you ask me. I mean, I know it's a little early to make that statement, but I mean, that's the type of quarterback prospect we're looking at here. Last year, the one game he played, I mean, granted, he didn't throw a touchdown pass and he threw a pick, but you got to remember, it was against the Broncos defense and it was his first ever start. I mean, what for fuck's sake, what do you expect from a guy going up against the Broncos D? It's an elite D. All right, and granted, he is going to be playing them twice a year. You might not want to start him in those games. You might want to find someone else to throw out there for those bad matchups. But overall, man, look at it this way, okay? If Alex Smith was a top 3 quarterback last year, perennial game manager Alex Smith, a top 3 finish in fantasy last year, went undrafted. No one saw it coming, okay? And then you take that fact alone, and Patrick Mahomes, I know we don't have a big NFL sample size of his production to go off of. So we have to go off of college. We have to go off of the offense we're projecting here. Now, this offense only got better. He's got Travis Kelce. He's got Kareem Hunt out of the backfield to target. He's got Tyreek Hill, and now the team also added Sammy Watkins. You couple that with the fact that the Kansas City defense is probably going to get worse this year, and you're going to have a lot of passing plays and a lot of fantasy points for Patrick Mahomes. It's about the supporting cast. It's about game script. Get this guy on your team late. Hell, you don't even have to draft him before the 10th round. I mean, I'm sure in a lot of drafts he's going to go later than that if people aren't taking a lot of backup quarterbacks. So, hey, get this guy on your team. Highly recommended. Maybe pair him with another sleeper if you want a little added cushion. But I have high confidence in this guy going into 2018. Let me go ahead and put my robe on for pick number 2 on our quarterback sleeper list, because this one's a doozy, all right? We got, in the 11th round, pick 9 ADP, it is Tennessee Titans quarterback Marcus Mariota! The case for drafting Marcus Mariota in 2018 is simple as well. There's really 3 points to it. First is the fact that the Titans have a new offensive coordinator, and we expect that offensive coordinator to open up the pass a little bit more, not be such a run-heavy team this year. So that's number 1. Now, granted, is that guaranteed to happen? No one can really say. But the fact that they're shaking up the coordinator, That could lead to better things for Marcus Mariota, honestly, in this year compared to last. The second thing we look at with Mariota is a positive regression to the mean. And what do I mean by that? Well, in 2016, Marcus Mariota had over 3,400 passing yards, 26 passing touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. But what did he do last year? He had 3,200 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. That's right, Mariota threw more picks than touchdowns last year. But that's a completely different story if you look at what he did in 2016. So what's he going to do in 2018? Most likely, it's going to be something in between what he did in 2016 and 2017. But I also think there's a chance he could completely go off and do even better than his 2016 numbers. So positive regression to the mean is going to happen. They've got a new offensive coordinator. And then that brings me to my last and final point. Marcus Mariota is a proven mobile quarterback that is not scared to scramble and get you the rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. And that is valuable in fantasy football, pretty much regardless of the format. Because even if you're doing one of those leagues that is like 6-point passing touchdowns, so like the passing touchdowns are equivalent to the rushing touchdowns, which most leagues don't even do that anymore. A lot of leagues now do 4-point passing touchdowns, which personally I think is a little dumb, but whatever. I mean, that's actually more of the more favored format these days is for the 4-point passing touchdowns. So in that type of league, when he gets rushing touchdowns, he's getting more points than the passing touchdowns. But more importantly, because this applies to virtually all leagues, passing yards, generally you get 1 point per 25 yards passing. Rushing, though, you get 1 point for every 10 yards rushing. Almost every league is set up that way. So when Marcus Mariota takes off down the field, if he's getting you 50, 60 rushing yards a game, that's equivalent to 5 or 6 fantasy points. Okay? That's like an additional touchdown pass for a 6-point pass TD league. So, listen, the rushing ability's there. He's going to have better passing stats this year. The new coordinator gives me promise. For an 11th round shot, that's a lot of upside you're looking at. So go ahead and think about taking Marcus Mariota late as balls in your draft. The third guy on our list of late-round quarterback targets for 2018, he's going on average in the 12th round, 11th pick. It is quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott may actually be the safest bet on this list to finish as a top 10 quarterback. And why do I say that? Because even though last year for him was viewed as kind of an off year compared to what he did as a rookie, Dak Prescott still finished as a top 10 quarterback last year. The only thing of it is, late in the season when Ezekiel Elliott was serving his suspension, that's when Dak Prescott started to struggle. Where during that stretch of time, he only had one game with a top 10 quarterback weekly finish once Ezekiel Elliott got suspended. But what that means is all you really need is Ezekiel Elliott to stay healthy and on the field, and you can be pretty damn confident that Dak Prescott's going to produce like a top quarterback. It's interesting that it works out that way, because I don't think we've ever seen a quarterback that is so dependent on his star running back being on the field in order to do well. But for Prescott, that seems to be the case, at least as going off the data that we have right now. Now, there is some concern with Prescott over the fact that Dez Bryant is gone, and now their top receiver projects to be Allen Hurns. So you have Allen Hurns and Michael Gallup as the projected top 2 receivers. Jason Witten is gone as well. That does cause a little bit of concern, but honestly, I think Prescott's the type of quarterback that can produce for you even if the weapons around him aren't amazing. I mean, this is also another one of those mobile quarterbacks that can get you points with his legs. You know, you can count on some rushing yards every week, possibly a rushing touchdown. Dak Prescott's a very safe option for a guy that is going in the late 12th round. So this is definitely one of those guys, if you want to just draft one quarterback and say, fuck it, I'm not even going to take a backup, but I want to draft my quarterback late, Prescott might be the one for you. I think he's got a really strong chance to finish as a top 10 quarterback once again. I think the script is there for him to do better than last year, even without Dez Bryant and Jason Witten. I would not have any problem drafting Dak Prescott this year. I think he's going to be a solid pick late in the draft. Now that we're on to the fourth quarterback on our list, we're starting to talk about real late in your fantasy draft. The fourth quarterback on my list, he is going on average in the 14th round of the draft, 6th pick. It is none other than Chicago Bears quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. There's no doubt that Mitchell Trubisky is the riskiest bet on this list to actually finish 2018 as a top 10 quarterback. But I believe that risk is baked into his low draft price. You don't have to take him until the 14th round or later. So, given that information, let's look at how Mitchell Trubisky could actually be a top 10 quarterback this year. What are we looking for him to do? Well, yeah, that all depends on, do you think the Chicago Bears are going to rebound from last year? Are they going to be this year's Los Angeles Rams? Because let's think about Jared Goff. Nobody would have started Jared Goff in fantasy for his rookie year. He was terrible. But then all of a sudden he bursts onto the scene in his second year, and the Rams are this offensive juggernaut. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen in Chicago, but there's definitely a chance it will. You look at the fact that the Chicago Bears brought in Allen Robinson. They drafted a receiver this year. They also added Trey Burton in free agency. You still got Tariq Cohen coming out of the backfield to catch balls. You got Jordan Howard, who's a pretty good quality running back as far as running between the tackles. Bears continue to have an excellent offensive line. The Bears' defense is improving. That whole team appears to be on the rise. And so it comes down to this. Do you believe that Mitchell Trubisky can make that second-year leap as a starting quarterback? Do you believe that the Chicago Bears are going to be significantly better and more competitive team than they were last year? If you believe those things are going to happen, then you may want to draft Trubisky late and actually trust him as a starting quarterback. Now again, like I said, this is one of my riskier picks on this list to be a late-round sleeper. But I do believe the potential is there for Trubisky to make some noise in year two. When you look at how the supporting cast around him has improved, he's going to progress now that he's no longer a rookie. And just overall, the Bears seem to be a more solid team coming into this year. So again, one of the riskier picks on this list, but it's a gamble that could pay off huge if you draft him as your only quarterback and he actually ends up being really good. So consider him as a guy that you take a stab on late, and if you don't want to risk him being your only quarterback on the roster, take him as a backup. See if he blows up. But I definitely think this is a guy that has a lot of sleeper potential coming into 2018, and a guy that not a lot of people are talking about. We're going to make sure to give you a list of honorable mentions at the end of the video, but let's talk about the fifth quarterback on this top 5 sleeper list. And it is the quarterback that's going the latest on the list as well. We're talking average draft position of 14th round, 7th pick. It is none other than Cleveland Browns quarterback Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor is a quarterback that has proven in past seasons that he can finish as a top 10 quarterback. Last year was not one of those years, however. There was a 1 or 2 game stretch where he actually got benched, which definitely hurt his total stat numbers for the year. But he finished around quarterback 16 last year, which isn't terrible, but that's not what you want from your starting quarterback in fantasy. But in seasons prior to last year, Taylor did have some top 10 finishes. He's one of those guys that, because of his mobile ability, his ability to scramble and pick up rushing yards week in and week out, elevates his floor. This is a guy that last year he didn't have a single 300-yard passing game, and yet he was still able to post respectable fantasy numbers for a good chunk of the season. Now, why is he going this late in the draft? There's a couple reasons. There's a lot of options for quarterbacks this year, which is obviously one of the reasons. He's coming off not such a great season. As I told you, quarterback 16 is not really what we're looking for in fantasy from a starting quarterback. So that recency bias is going to hurt him a little bit too. But really, the fact he joined the Browns, and there's such a stigma around the Browns. I mean, we're talking about a team that went 0-16 last year. So they have that stigma of just being a shitty team with a shitty culture and that it's never going to change. But I really do think this year it's going to change. I'm not saying Browns are going to be a playoff team or even get 8 wins. I'm not going to make predictions like that. But I know this year they're not going to go winless with the roster they have. Okay? You look at the running backs they have. Chubb, Duke Johnson, Carlos Hyde. That's an excellent running back committee right there. Okay? They bring in Jarvis Landry. Assuming that Josh Gordon doesn't have a relapse, they're going to have him, and he's a big-time playmaker. They still have Corey Coleman as a depth receiver, who I think can, if given the opportunity, will shine. David Njoku, a big-time tight end coming into another season where he's not going to be a rookie anymore. Baker Mayfield, is the backup quarterback, and there is some. I think that's another reason why Taylor's going late. People think at some point in the season Mayfield's going to take over. But I honestly don't think that's such a big risk. I think the Browns are committed to starting Tyrod Taylor, and unless he shits the bed, I just don't see how Mayfield's going to get on the field this year. I think that Tyrod Taylor's going to make for a great bridge quarterback and possibly start for quite a long time if he's producing results. Now, again, I think the fact that Tyrod Taylor's going in the 14th round gives you very little risk taking him on draft day. And if he does happen to get taken over by Baker Mayfield at some point during the middle of the season, there will be waiver wire options for quarterback, most likely, for you to replace him. So Tyrod Taylor, because you have Mayfield behind him and, there's some other risks involved, maybe not a guy you want to totally bank on as your only quarterback on the roster, but I think he's one of those great quarterbacks that can pair with another sleeper. And at the same time, I think Tyrod Taylor's upside is massive. I think people are not taking into account how good of a finish Tyrod Taylor could have if all the pieces come together on this Browns offense. If Josh Gordon, doesn't have a relapse, stays healthy, is on the field all year with Jarvis Landry, Corey Coleman also on the field, David Njoku, all the weapons we talked about. If the stars can align for this Browns offense, which by the way has a pretty good offensive line too, I mean, it's going to be just a hell of a season for Tyrod Taylor. I'm talking you could actually make the argument that Tyrod Taylor is like a top 6 quarterback through the first half of the year. I mean, that is the kind of upside we're talking here for a 14th rounder. So, I definitely think Tyrod Taylor is going to end up on one or two of my fantasy teams this year. Just the price tag on him is so low. He might even go undrafted in a couple leagues. This is a guy that needs to be on your radar, honestly. He needs to be on your radar. I have some pretty strong conviction behind him because, again, you can fall back on the rushing numbers even if the passing production isn't there. And that's something you need to remember. These mobile quarterbacks give you such a safe floor. So, honestly, 14th round, you need help at quarterback, draft Tyrod Taylor with confidence.